So do you want to rehearse this?
No, we'll just wing it. Hey, I'm Steve Dwyer, it's my son Nathan, and we're beginning this channel to document the journey that the two of us have towards our goal to become, or maybe my goal, a goal to become New York Times best-selling authors, or at least have the quality of product to become a New York Times best-selling author. Given this channel the name Add Placeholder Text, and because I think a lot of the journey that we're going to go on is about filling in placeholders because we don't know what to do here, and then come back and fill it in later as we learn, and inviting you to join this journey with us. Just a little bit of backstory of how we got to this point. I have had this idea in my head about a way to explain some things regarding faith, religion, science, and how they intersect and work with each other, and how to have a life that is impactful for eternity. And a nonfiction book that I was trying to work on just wasn't resonating, and this idea of a fictional approach to telling a story really grabbed hold of my mind. And I would start talking about things as we'd be at home, and as I was describing how things could work, one evening Nathan was challenging me on some of those, and well, this part doesn't make sense, and I'm not so sure about this. And so I, on the spur of the moment, just said, you know what? These ideas are a whole lot more valuable. They're going to be a whole lot better with your input in the way that you're challenging me. I think this is going to be a whole lot better with the two of us together than with me by myself. Would you be interested in joining me and partnering with that? And how would you just tell me your perspective, or tell them your perspective on that evening?
So kind of giving a little bit of background to that evening, like he said, he'd been talking about some things that he found interesting. He had spitballed some ideas of things that he wanted to have in a book, some plot points, world-building ideas, and I found it fascinating. And so that evening we were talking a little bit more in detail, and we were sharing like what the world would look like, a little bit of details, possible details about some of the characters, and that got me more invested into the world. I was already kind of invested because of the types of scientific and philosophical things that would be discussed in a novel written in that world. But getting to know the characters a little bit, getting to know that world even better, seeing how that specific world or a world like that would help to relate Christianity and theology to science, which are two passions of mine, made me excited to see where that would go. And I think it's something that we could definitely do better together with our different interests and our different skill sets than either one of us could do by ourselves. So I was excited to kind of join along with that and see what help I could provide as we start this journey together into building that world and telling the story that we want to tell.
But that's not actually what we're going to be working on first. It actually turned into, from an idea of, oh, let's just write a story, to, well, there's so many pieces here that all need to fit together. This is probably going to need to be maybe a trilogy, maybe a 7-book saga, to try to convey all of the different pieces without just overwhelming with some of what could feel like drudgery of let's look at the science, let's look at philosophy. We need more story to keep people engaged. And so it was a big enough thing, and we don't have a background in writing novels, so we decided to start someplace else.
So back in high school, I think it was my sophomore year, I went through a novel writing course, a one-year adventure novel. The goal was to, over the course of that school year, write an adventure novel. I got about a third of the way through before I got stuck and decided that I couldn't finish it. But that is where we're going to try to pick up to start off our writing career per se, or our writing experience, getting the experience from finishing off that novel. So what we've started doing now is kind of looking at what I had written, trying to remember what my thought processes were, because I didn't write a bunch of stuff down, which is something that we're going to try to not make the same mistake of in our writing, to try to document everything, see what choices we're making, so that way we can look back and see, okay, so this is why we made this decision, this is why we made this decision about the world, about what this character is like, what decisions they make. So a lot of this is just going to be figuring out how to write, and especially how to write collaboratively, because it's not just one person coming up with the entire story. If we're working together on this, we have to make sure that we're aligned in the story we want to tell, the message we want to get across. Otherwise, if we're writing separate chapters, they're not going to join together well. They're going to have different messages, and it's not going to be a good product. So what we're starting out with is figuring out how do we collaborate and how do we write. So
yeah, and that's going to be a fun part of this journey, is exploring what was once a father-son relationship and is now a co-author relationship, starting with what was his story to write, and figuring out what does it collaborate on something that was his brainchild, and then collaborating on something that was once my brainchild. Right. Also, especially as we get to the second project, there are some aspects of philosophy where we're going to have to agree philosophically on how things actually work. What are we comfortable with expressing as fiction? What actually needs to be true? And how do we agree on, or how closely do we agree on what is true? So that's going to be another interesting part of the journey. With his story, I do remember when he was writing it in high school, I think I read the first chapter, right, and I thought, wow, this looks like a fascinating story, but I will wait to read the whole thing until you have it done.
And now you're a part of that journey.
And now I'm a part of the journey, and I hadn't read any more of it until like last week, as he's been putting what he has into our collaboration tool. As we look forward, some of the things that you can expect to see us work through are, first of all, the interpersonal play between father-son, now co-author, equal partners in a project. Things like, how do we even learn to be good writers? Where does that skill come from? What tools do we want to use? How do we take the ideas that are in our individual heads, put them somewhere where we can collaborate on them, and keep track of all of the different things that need to be tracked? What other things might be part of that journey?
Learning how to make a character, what all goes into that. World building, what all do we need to know about who this character is before we write them? Back when I was writing in high school, I didn't take the time really to get to know the characters. There was the main character I got to know a little bit more than the others, but I didn't take the time to figure out what are their motivations, what are they like, what's their background, how would they react in certain situations. So when it came time to writing dialogue between them, figuring out what interactions looked like in the book, I didn't really have much to go on. So we want to make sure that we have a very solid foundation, so that way as we're building up, we kind of have a structure, a blueprint, we know where we're going. We're actually building on something in a way that makes sense.
And so those are things that you can expect to see from this channel. It is my goal, my hope, that we can publish a video every week. And so we're looking forward to having you join us on this journey. And if this sounds remotely interesting to you, go ahead and subscribe, hit that link, and we will see you next week.